Excuse me, we'd like a room for tonight, please.
I'm afraid we don't have anything available, not for someone like you.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. My granddaughter is exhausted and we really need a place to rest. Could you please check again?
Ma'am, this hotel isn't really for people like you. I'm afraid we don't have a room for your kind.
An old woman walked into the fanciest hotel in the city one evening. She was wearing a gray coat that had been washed so many times it had faded almost to white. Her shoes were plain and flat, the kind you wear when you're on your feet all day. She had one old bag on her shoulder, and, walking right beside her, holding her hand, was her 9-year-old granddaughter. The little girl's name was Lily. She was carrying a stuffed rabbit named Pearl. Pearl had one ear that was a little longer than the other, from being held the same way for so many years. The old woman's name was Claudette Deveraux. And here is the thing that nobody in that hotel knew yet. She owned the building, the whole thing, every floor, every room, every chair in the lobby. The hotel was called the Meridian Monarch, 17 floors, marble floors, soft lighting, a place with a reputation for making guests feel truly welcome. It was the most important hotel in a company called the Deveraux Hospitality Group, a company Claudette had spent 31 years building from nothing. She had started with one small run-down bed and breakfast in Louisiana. Now she had one of the best hotel groups in the whole American South. She was 71 years old. She had been through a lot. She had lost her husband. She had almost lost her business. She had survived 3 hurricanes, and she had spent her whole career being a black woman in an industry that often acted like she wasn't even there. She had not called ahead to let anyone know she was coming. She never did. That afternoon, Claudette had been sitting at the kitchen table of the small house where she lived. The house was simple, much smaller than what she could afford, but she loved it. Her daughter had grown up there. Her husband had passed away there, and Lily had taken her very first steps in that hallway, laughing and waving her little arms around for balance. She had been reading reports about her hotel when she noticed something. The money numbers were fine. The rooms were almost always full. But then she got to the comments that real guests had left, and 3 different people had written almost the exact same thing. They said that when they walked in, they felt like the staff had already decided something about them, before they even said hello, like they were being judged before they had a chance to speak. 3 people saying the same thing. That was a pattern. A pattern was a problem, and a problem at her best hotel was a problem she needed to see for herself. So she finished her coffee, called her daughter, picked up Lily, grabbed the old canvas bag she kept ready for these trips, and walked out the door. In the car, Lily asked where they were going. To see something, Claudette said. What kind of something? The kind you have to see with your own eyes, the kind you can't learn from reading a report. Lily nodded and went back to looking out the window, holding Pearl, watching the city go by. When Claudette stepped into the lobby of the Meridian Monarch, she stopped near the door for a moment, the way she always did when she visited her hotels without warning. She wanted to feel what the place felt like before anyone noticed her. The lights were nice, the music was just right. A young couple sat near the windows, comfortable and happy. A businessman walked through like he belonged there. So far, so good. But then, there was the front desk. 2 people were working there. A young man named Brandon, tall, well-dressed, confident-looking, and a young woman named Serena, who was sneaking glances at her phone below the counter, trying to look like she wasn't. Neither one of them looked up when Claudette and Lily walked through the door. Claudette noticed. She walked slowly to the desk, holding Lily's hand, and waited. She gave them a moment to notice her on their own. Brandon finally looked up. His eyes moved over her quickly, her old coat, her simple bag, her worn shoes, the little girl beside her. And something changed in his face, like he had already made a decision. "Good evening," he said, but his voice was flat, like he was already done with the conversation before it had even started. "Good evening," Claudette said. "I'd like a room for tonight. My granddaughter and I would like to stay here." "Do you have a reservation?" Brandon asked. "I don't," Claudette said, "but I was hoping you might have one available." Brandon glanced at his screen. "I'm sorry," he said. "We're all booked up tonight. We can't help you." Claudette had worked in hotels for 31 years. She knew what a fully booked hotel looked like on a computer, and she knew what it looked like on a person's face when they just didn't want to bother. These two things were very different. "Could you check one more time?" she asked kindly. "I don't need anything fancy. A regular room is fine." Brandon clicked through his screen quickly. So quickly it was clear he wasn't really looking. "I already checked," he said. "There's nothing available. There are some other hotels nearby. The DoubleTree on Canal Street is usually pretty affordable." He said it like he was doing her a favor. Claudette looked at him calmly. She had a face that was patient and steady, a face that had lived through a lot and had stopped pretending otherwise, a face that could wait a very long time. Beside her, Lily had looked up from Pearl. She was watching Brandon with big, curious eyes, trying to figure out what was going on. "I appreciate the suggestion," Claudette said, "but I'd really like to stay here tonight. Could you please check one more time?" Brandon clicked through the screen again, fast, just to show he'd already done it. "I'm sorry," he said. "There's nothing." Right at that moment, a man in a nice blazer walked over from the direction of the bar. He was in his 50s, relaxed, the kind of man who always seemed comfortable in fancy places because he had always been welcome in them. He stepped right up to the desk, barely even glancing at Claudette, and smiled at Brandon. "Brandon, my man," he said, "any chance you could get me one of those corner suites for one more night? I know it's last minute." And Brandon changed. Completely. Right away. His whole face lit up. His shoulders relaxed. His voice got warm, like a completely different person had suddenly shown up behind the desk. "Mr. Heller, of course!" His fingers moved fast and eager on the keyboard. "Actually, yes, we have one available. I can set you up tonight." The man thanked him and walked away. Claudette watched every second of it without saying a word. Lily watched it too. Then Lily looked up at her grandmother, and in the clear, honest voice of a 9-year-old who just didn't understand what was happening, she said, "Grandma, didn't he just say there were no rooms?" The question carried across the lobby. A woman nearby looked up from her book. A man by the elevator turned his head. Brandon's face went tight. Claudette looked down at Lily. She kept her voice gentle, the way she always did when she didn't want the world's messiness to upset her granddaughter. "Yes," she said simply. "He did." She straightened and looked at Brandon. "I'd like to speak with your manager, please." The manager's name was Preston Albright. He had worked in hotels for 18 years. He came downstairs, straightened his jacket in the elevator, and walked into the lobby looking confident, like a man who had handled problems many times before and expected this to be no different. He looked at the situation. Old woman, little girl with a rabbit, one old bag, Brandon standing carefully behind the desk. And Preston made the same quiet decision in his head that everyone else had already made. "Hello, ma'am," he said pleasantly. "I understand you're looking for a room tonight. I've been told we're fully booked, and I'm sorry for any trouble. I'd like you to check the system yourself, please," Claudette said quietly. "Your colleague checked for me. I'd feel better if a manager looked at me personally." Something in her voice made Preston slow down just a little. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was just very steady. The voice of someone who had spoken in important rooms for a very long time. He turned to the computer. He looked, but he only saw what Brandon had already shown him, because Brandon had set the screen to show only part of the booking system. Preston didn't think to look deeper. He didn't check the backup system. He didn't check the special section for company executives. "I'm sorry," Preston said. "My colleague was right. No standard rooms are available tonight." Claudette paused, then, very quietly, "Do you have availability in the penthouse?" A small silence. Preston looked a little surprised. "The penthouse is a very special suite," he said carefully. "It's not something we open up for walk-ins. It requires—" "I know what it is," Claudette said. "I'm asking if it's free tonight." Preston glanced at Brandon. A look passed between them, a look that said, without saying anything, that they had both already decided this woman was not a penthouse kind of guest. "It's reserved for guests with special arrangements," Preston said. "It's not available for walk-ins." Claudette nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says, "I have heard you, and I have understood far more than you said." "I see," she said. She reached into her canvas bag and took out a plain, simple phone. No case, nothing fancy. She dialed a number from memory, lifted it to her ear. The call lasted less than a minute. She said 8 words. "I'm in the lobby. I need Thomas downstairs now." She listened for a few seconds, then she hung up. She put the phone away. Then she looked at Preston with the calm patience of someone who has already said everything that matters and is simply waiting for the room to figure it out.
"Someone will be down shortly," she said. Preston opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Lily tugged gently on Claudette's coat. "Grandma," she said, "can I sit down? My feet are tired." "Of course, baby," Claudette said. She walked Lily to the nearest chairs and helped her sit. Lily put Pearl in her lap and looked up at the lobby ceiling with the peaceful patience of a 9-year-old who has learned that grown-ups sometimes just take a very long time to sort things out. Preston stared at them, then at Brandon, then at his own hands. Something felt wrong. He couldn't explain exactly what, but the feeling was growing. He straightened his jacket and waited. And somewhere in that waiting, a small, uncomfortable thought began to form. Thomas Beaumont had worked for the Deveraux Hospitality Group for 11 years, 60 years old, silver hair, and the kind of calmness that only comes from spending years in rooms where things go wrong and learning that staying quiet and steady is usually the most powerful thing you can do. He stepped out of the elevator with 2 people from the company's leadership team. They crossed the lobby to where Claudette sat with Lily. Thomas stopped in front of her and bent forward slightly. Not quite a bow, just the natural movement of someone who genuinely respects the person in front of them. "Mrs. Deveraux," he said, "I'm sorry you were made to wait." The lobby didn't get louder. It got quieter. The way things go quiet in real life, slowly, one sound dropping away at a time until only the important thing is left. Thomas stood straight and turned to face the front desk. His voice was calm and even. Quiet voices, Claudette had always believed, land harder than loud ones. "This is Claudette Deveraux," he said. "She is the founder and the sole owner of the Deveraux Hospitality Group. She built this hotel. She designed this lobby. Her name is on the building. Every job here, every uniform, everything inside these walls exists because of this woman." He let that sit for a breath. And tonight, she was told there were no rooms, while another guest was given a room at the same desk, in the same 5 minutes. Brandon looked like he might faint. Preston stood completely still, the way people stand when the ground has shifted under them and they're waiting to find out how far it's going to move. Lily, from her chair, looked at Thomas very carefully, then at her grandmother, then at the desk. Then she said, in her clear, honest, 9-year-old voice, not trying to be funny, just truly trying to understand, "So she owns it? She owns the whole thing?" Thomas pressed his lips together tight. One of the other executives cleared his throat. Claudette looked at her granddaughter. "Every inch of it," she said simply. Lily thought about it for a second. Then, "And they still said there was no room?" "Yes," Claudette said. Lily looked at the desk. then back at her grandmother. That's not very smart. It moved through the room like a gentle wave. Someone near the bar let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. The woman with the book put it down completely. Brandon stared at the floor, and Claudette, for the first time all evening, let herself smile. Just a tiny, private smile. Not because she was happy about what had happened, but because of Lily. Because of the way a child looks at the world and simply says what is true. What happened next did not happen right away. That was important. Claudette had never punished anyone in anger. In 31 years, she had made hard decisions about people, but never while she was still upset. She had learned long ago that decisions made while you're angry are really just decisions about your feelings, not about what is right. So first, she took Lily upstairs, to the penthouse, which, it turned out, had been available the whole time. Thomas confirmed it in less than 30 seconds once he looked at the right part of the system. Claudette ordered room service, helped Lily into a giant hotel bathrobe that went all the way to the floor and made her look like a tiny little monk. She sat with her while she ate and told her a story about the very first hotel she had ever owned. A small bed and breakfast in Louisiana, with a leaking roof, and a cook named Bertrand who made the best biscuits she had ever tasted. Bertrand always said that the whole secret to a good hotel was making every single person feel, the very second they walked through your door, like the door had been waiting for them. Lily fell asleep with Pearl tucked under her chin and the city sparkling through the penthouse window. Claudette sat beside her for a while, not moving, just listening to her granddaughter breathe. Then she went back downstairs.
Preston was waiting for her. He had been rehearsing what to say. She let him say it. He apologized. He took responsibility. He said he understood if she wanted to make changes. She listened to every word without interrupting. Then she said, "I want to tell you what I saw tonight, Preston. Not how I felt, not what I decided, what I actually saw." She told him about the 3 guest comments she had read that afternoon. She told him about walking through the door and being ignored. She told him about Brandon's screen being clicked through so fast it was clear he wasn't really trying. She told him about watching Brandon's whole face change the moment Mr. Heller appeared, how warm he became, how helpful, when 30 seconds before there had been nothing. Warmth wasn't missing from this lobby, she said. It was just being saved for certain people, and that is the problem. She told him about Lily's question. Didn't he just say there were no rooms? Out of the mouth of a 9-year-old, she said. My whole problem with tonight, said perfectly in 8 words. I don't think you're a bad person, Claudette said, and I don't think Brandon is either. But you've both gotten into habits of deciding things about people before giving them a real chance. And when nobody tells you that those habits are wrong, they start to feel normal. They start to feel like just the way things work. But they aren't. They're just carelessness that nobody stopped. She looked at him directly. You are not losing your job tonight, but you are going to be watched carefully for a while. Not to punish you, but because I need to know, is tonight a one-time mistake? Or has this been happening over and over? Because if it has been, then I owe it to every person who walked through that door before me and got treated like nothing, without the protection of owning the building, to do something different. Preston nodded, small but real. I want to do better than this, he said. Good, Claudette said. Then let's find out. She found Brandon in the break room, sitting with a glass of water, not drinking it, just holding it. He was 28, but he looked younger than that at that moment. The way people look when they've done something they can't take back, and they know it. Claudette sat across from him without making a big deal about it. I don't know what to say, he said. You don't have to explain it to me, she said. I already know what happened. What I want you to do is explain it to yourself. He looked at his glass. You looked like, he started, then he stopped.
Then he started again. I saw you walk in, and I made a decision. Before you said a word, before you even reached the desk, I had already decided. Yes, Claudette said quietly, you had. I don't know where that comes from, he said, and he looked genuinely confused, like he was seeing something inside himself for the very first time, something that had been quietly sitting there for a long time. That's the right question, Claudette said, and it's going to take you longer than tonight to answer it. She leaned forward a little. I am not ending your job here, but you are going into a training program, the real one, the deep one, and you are going to think about tonight for a long time. Then you're going to come back to this desk and do your work differently, or you'll find out that you can't, and that answer will tell you something important about yourself too. Either way, you'll know yourself better than you do right now, and that is worth something. Brandon looked at her for a long moment, then quietly, why aren't you firing me? Claudette looked at him with the patience of someone who has thought about this kind of question for a very long time. Because my husband, she said, was fired from a hotel kitchen in 1987 for something that was not his fault, by a manager who looked at him the way you looked at me tonight, and made a decision before my husband had said a single word. It took him 4 years to find his way back to the work he was meant to do. I don't want to be part of repeating that story, not if I can help it. Brandon said nothing, but something small and quiet changed in his face. The way a face changes when something real finally gets through. Don't waste it, Claudette said simply, and she stood up.
Serena found Claudette before Claudette could find her. She was standing right outside the break room, hands folded in front of her, looking like someone who had spent the last hour deciding whether to speak up or stay quiet, and had finally chosen to speak. I was on my phone when you walked in, she said right away. I saw you come through the door, and I didn't put my phone down. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Claudette looked at her. Why are you telling me this? Because, Serena said, and then paused, and then started again more carefully. Someone should have welcomed you the moment you walked through that door. That is the whole point of this job, and I didn't do it. And when I found out who you were, I realized I should have done it anyway, no matter who you turned out to be. She stopped. She looked uncertain. You're not in trouble, Claudette said, but I want you to remember something. There is a difference between what you just told me right now and what you might have said if I had turned out to be nobody important. That space in between, that is where the real work happens. You are being moved to a team leader role starting next week, not because tonight went well, it didn't, but because you came to find me. That took something, and I want to put that something somewhere it can do more good. The last person Claudette spoke to that night was the one she had least expected. His name was Gerald, a security guard. I'm 53 years old, big and solid, a face that had spent many years looking serious when it needed to. She had realized, thinking back over the evening, that things had almost gone much further. The situation had been moving toward Gerald being called over, toward being asked to make her and Lily leave, and it hadn't happened, and she wanted to know why. She found him near the back door at the end of his shift. You didn't step in, she said, when you were almost asked to. What stopped you? Gerald looked at her for a long, quiet moment, like someone deciding whether to put down something heavy they'd been carrying all night. My mother, he said finally. She's 74. She takes the bus everywhere because she never learned to drive. She dresses the way you were dressed tonight. And when she goes to nice places she has every right to walk into, people look at her the way they were looking at you. And she never says anything. She just absorbs it and goes home. But I can see it on her when she gets back. Something was taken from her. Something small, but real. Something she didn't deserve to lose. He stopped. I looked at the floor. I looked back up. I'm not going to help somebody's grandmother. I don't care who asks me. I won't do it. Claudette was quiet for a moment.
Then she asked, "What's your mother's name?" Gerald blinked, surprised by the question. "Dorothy," he said. Claudette nodded. "Tell Dorothy," she said, "that this building belongs to someone who wants her to walk through the front door any time she feels like it, and that when she does, there will be someone there whose whole job is to make her feel like she was expected, like the door was waiting for her." Gerald's face did something that was hard to describe. He pressed his lips together and nodded once. Claudette put her hand gently on his arm. "Thank you," she said, "for your mother." And she walked back through the lobby. Things changed after that night, but slowly, the way real change always happens. Not all at once, not with a big announcement, just little by little, one better decision at a time. Denise Moreau spent the next month rebuilding the training program for all the front desk staff. Not the scripts they memorized, not the rules on the checklist. Those were already fine. What she rebuilt was the thing underneath all of that, the part about how you look at a person the moment they walk through your door, before they say anything, before you know anything about them. She brought in real guests, all kinds of people, to share exactly what had made them feel welcome and what had made them feel judged. And once, she brought in Claudette herself to speak to a group of new workers. Claudette showed up in the gray coat. She told them about the little bed and breakfast in Louisiana, about Bertrand and his biscuits, about his belief that every door should feel like it was waiting for whoever was about to walk through it. She did not tell them about the night she had been turned away from her own lobby. The other staff members told them that part later, and the fact that Claudette hadn't used it, hadn't held it up as proof, turned out to teach the new workers more than if she had. Brandon finished the training. It took him 5 months. He came back to the front desk. He worked there for 2 more years. Then he moved into a role where he trained other people. He was very good at it. He had a special gift for helping people understand the gap between what you mean to do
and what the person on the other side actually feels. He understood it better than anyone because he had lived on the wrong side of it. Preston went through his review. What they found was not cruelty, just carelessness. Habits that had been running on their own for too long because nobody in charge had ever said, "Stop." Preston was a decent man who had stopped asking hard questions because no one was asking them of him. He stayed at the Monarch. Over time, he became better than what he had been. Serena was promoted twice in 18 months. And one Thursday in March, Gerald's mother Dorothy came to the Monarch for afternoon tea. She wore her church hat and her best coat. A young woman named Aaliyah met her at the door, took her coat, and walked her to the very best table in the tea room, the one by the window where the afternoon light comes in just right. Dorothy sat there for 2 hours. She drank her tea. She ate the little sandwiches and a slice of lemon cake. She looked out at a city she had lived in for 40 years. This afternoon, she was treated exactly like who she was, a woman who deserved a nice table by the window, and someone who already knew her name. She told Gerald about it that evening. He said he was glad. She said it was the nicest afternoon she'd had in a very long time. He didn't explain why. He just said he was glad again. And both times, he truly meant it. 6 months after that November evening, Claudette came back to the Monarch. Same gray coat, same canvas bag, and Lily walked beside her, a little taller now, holding Pearl just a little less tightly. The way kids hold their favorite things as they grow up and start to realize the world is bigger than they thought. The young man at the front desk looked up the moment they walked through the door. His name tag said Antoine, 3 months on the job. "Good evening," he said, and his voice had something in it that Claudette had spent 31 years trying to explain to people. Something you either already have or you slowly build over time. The sound of someone who is genuinely glad you showed up, who looks at you and sees a person, not an outfit, not a bag, a person.
"Good evening," Claudette said. "Are you checking in tonight?" "We are." "Welcome," Antoine said and smiled. "I'm so glad you're here." It was such a small thing, a smile, a greeting, 4 little words. It cost him nothing. It took less than 5 seconds. But Lily looked up at her grandmother when he said it, and Claudette looked down at Lily. And something quiet passed between them. One of those small, perfect moments that doesn't need any words. A moment that was exactly right. "We're glad to be here," Claudette said, and she meant every word. In the elevator on the way up, Lily asked her grandmother a question. "Is this what the hotel is supposed to feel like?" Claudette looked at their reflection in the shiny elevator doors. An old woman in a gray coat, a little girl with a rabbit, a worn canvas bag between them. "Yes," she said, "this is exactly what it's supposed to feel like." Lily thought about it for a moment. Then, "Did you always know it would feel like this, when you first built it?" Claudette was quiet for a little while. "I knew what I wanted it to feel like," she said, "but knowing what you want, and then making sure it actually happens every single day for every single person, that's the whole job. That's work that never stops." The elevator doors opened. They walked out together, Lily's hand in Claudette's, into the warm, soft light of the hallway. Below them, the city was doing what cities do on Thursday evenings. People coming and going, doors opening, bags being carried. 1,000 tiny moments happening all at once. Some people being made to feel welcome, and some people being quietly turned away in lobbies all across the city. In this one, tonight, the door was waiting. There is a kind of tiredness that settles into you when someone treats you like you don't belong somewhere, before you've even opened your mouth. It's not just the tiredness of a long day. It's something older, something heavier. The tired of having to prove over and over that you deserve the same ordinary kindness that other people just get. Claudette Deveraux had understood something for 31 years. Something she had built her whole company around. Hospitality isn't just a job. It's a choice. It's the choice to look at a person who walks through your door, any person, any coat, any bag, any age, and really see them. Not judge them, not decide something about them before they speak. Just see them. That choice takes a single moment. It costs nothing at all, and it is the only thing, in the end, that turns a building into a home.